So 5G and coffee, T-Mobile edition. We've been planning this for a little bit and really excited about it. This is the first carrier that we've actually had on our webinar series. So we've had a great turnout so far. So we'll keep doing these if they are pretty popular. But yeah, so in this episode, we're going to be covering all things T-Mobile. And I just wanted to mention real quick, as a bit of housekeeping, if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A section in the sidebar. And we'll get to them at the end of the show. We're actually going to have a section specifically for Q&A from the audience. But so moving into introductions, we're joined today by Paul Spencer, the Director of Channel Partner Sales over at T-Mobile and owner of a very cool professional headshot. Next we have Sean Hampson, our T-Mobile Carrier Partner Manager here at RCN Technologies. And I'm Mark Indelicato, the Content Marketing Specialist and host for today. How you guys doing?
Great.
Doing great. Really excited to get this one accomplished. I know that we connected with Paul last month, but excited to spread the message and the T-Mobile message and what they've been doing, and excited to have everyone join. I've seen we got quite the attendee list from on LinkedIn and all our followers at RCN and T-Mobile. So appreciate the partnership, Paul, and appreciate you joining.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I know we're excited to have the conversation too. Just as a sidebar, literally the headshot, because you brought it up, Mark. So the headshot, just get it out of the way. That was taken by Sam, our IT guy in the office in Chicago here. So Sam Fowler, if you're listening today, credit to you for the headshot. He does great headshots.
Absolutely. Does he do weddings too, Paul, or is this just only headshots?
He does. He's got a website. I wish I knew it. I feel bad now. I wish I knew what it was. But yeah, he's a really good photographer, actually. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Right on. So I think with that, we'll move into our agenda for the day. Can you give us a basic intro to T-Mobile and why those with different carriers might want to switch over?
That's a good question. Probably the key question.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I would tell you. So for really, this is my second stint with T-Mobile. I started back in 2001 when we had 6 million customers, I think, and we're a distant 6th place. And we had a value chain back then. There were 6 core values. That's grown to be a bit more than 6 at the moment, I would tell you. But being customer obsessed was one of them from the word go. And you'll hear Sievert, who is our now CEO, and Ledger was the same way. They always talk about being customer obsessed. And so what that comes out, or how that manifests itself, is really into value for a customer. So whether you're, we're talking about business customers here, obviously, but even on the consumer side, we offer immense value. And so value means a bunch of different things, but value in the business sector generally means you're going to get more for paying less. That's usually a good value. So the way that I talk about it is, listen, you get a Walmart price with a Nordstrom grade experience or product, if you will. So listen, I think whenever you go into a Nordstrom's, or when we used to shop at Nordstrom's, I guess, I'm not saying anything bad about Nordstrom's. It's just, we've been in a virtual world for a year, but you're used to going in there and you're looking for some level of value. That's what T-Mobile is to business customers. So that's kind of been our game for a really long time. What's happened over the past 3 years in particular, since about 2019, and maybe I'm jumping ahead to get into a bunch of stuff here on network and 5G, but is we were really far behind on the 4G game. Like, admittedly, we were super, super late to that game. But we did a bunch of things to set ourselves up for 5. And because of that, we got into 5G quicker than everybody else, and we made the right bets in different levels of spectrum. And so because of that, we literally have ran past AT&T and Verizon like they're tied to a fence post when it comes to what's out there from a carrier perspective. This isn't my words. These are, you can go look up in Forbes. You can go look up in any other trade rags that are out there. Pick your choice. They're all saying that Verizon and AT&T are 2 to 3 years behind T-Mobile. Now, again, we've always been the small. We've never had the network necessarily, but we not only have the network, and we haven't done anything with the value. We haven't lowered the value equation. So you still get this immense value, but now you get the network experience. So our CEO, Sievert, will talk about it, and he'll say, customers no longer have to choose between value or paying more or less. It's you pay less, but you still get the same value. You still get the best network experience that's out there. So that, to me, is the big equation that when you're talking to customers or when you're talking to partners that are out there, that to me is the hook. Like, that's the thing you should be talking about. And maybe we'll get into it, but I can use some stats on why that's a real thing.
I would definitely agree with you, Paul. I think it's very valuable, not only on the consumer side, but on the B2B side of how T-Mobile has taken the approach of, customer obsessed, like the team of experts that are going to support their account. It's a huge value add, right? Like we all are consumers in our own minds, and we get to spend our money where we choose, but making me feel like they care, of which I think T-Mobile has done a phenomenal job of really taking it to the next level. A lot of businesses have overlooked customer service and that aspect of the business. So that's just another value, right? I think that going that extra mile and making sure that you don't have to repeat yourself if you ever do have any issues. I think that they've done a phenomenal job, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. That was a great introduction. Thank you for that. And you did actually take it exactly where I was hoping you would. So I do appreciate that. But with that being said, we're going to move right into our main coffee talk section here. So I do want to just point out, again, if you guys have any questions that come up during the segment, just please drop them into that Q&A and we'll hit them at the end of the show. So without further ado, Paul, how is T-Mobile's 5G rollout progressing? I think this is one of the biggest questions most people are going to have, especially in terms of like, will I have coverage at my location or whatever? Sure. But
yeah. So I think I'll answer it in a couple of different ways and just give you real facts, because I think the hard part is, if you're just a consumer or anybody just like me, you look on social media or you're watching TV. If you're watching a ball game and there's a commercial on, AT&T is going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. Verizon. We're all going to say we're the best. I've got the best coverage. I can hire this celebrity and say we've got the first nationwide 5G, even though I don't. But and T-Mobile will come on and say we've got all this stuff, and AT&T will come on and say they've got the fastest and the best and all this stuff. So he's our COO, but a guy he used to say, this is the straight dope. Like this is what you need to know. And it's a couple of different things. So from a city's perspective, T-Mobile's in over 2,500 cities with 5G. I won't rattle off the stats of the other two, but if you combine the other two, they are not even 20% of that combined. So that's a big deal right there. Two, one of the big things we did, and I said we were late to 4G. So I'll give you an example. I go fishing every year a couple of times in northern Minnesota. And I go on the same fishing trip with the same 4 guys. We've been doing it 10 years. And then I take my boys, for my son who's 14 that we were talking about before. Him and his younger brother, the 3 of us go up there for his birthday. And we spend like 3 or 4 days at this fishing lodge up there. This is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it is literally an hour and a half from Canada. Never had coverage there. Literally never had coverage there. Because on a 4G basis, we didn't own the spectrum and we didn't do it. We just didn't put coverage there. So we went and bought all of this 5G spectrum in auctions year after year after year in the C-band area, to the point of where we got up to, just for mathematical sake, roughly call it 318 megahertz of spectrum in the C-band space. If you looked at a graph, AT&T had like 168 here. Verizon was under 100. Now, Verizon went out and spent $49 billion in the C-band auction that got announced about a month ago. This is really interesting. Either you guys know how much we paid for Sprint?
I do not.
26 billion.
Yep, we paid 26 billion.
Wow.
For all of the great customers, all the great employees, and all the great network assets. And Verizon, in order to catch up, went and spent 49 billion on just this one swath of spectrum. Now, by the way, they can't even clear that spectrum to work on it until 2024. So that's just a key stat. So that's still 3 years. So 2.5 years from now, they can start working on that spectrum. That gets them to just over 300. So call it just roughly parity, like you're slicing hairs at that point. But this is spectrum that we have owned on our own, and then we doubled our spectrum holdings with the acquisition of Sprint. So the stuff that we own, we started to roll out into, honestly, rural America. So I wish I had the picture, I should show it to you, but I'm at a gas station up there, and I just clicked, Ookla to see how fast the network was, because I had coverage, which was kind of weird. And I pulled a 297 meg download speed in the middle of nowhere, northern Minnesota, at a gas station. I'm not saying you're going to go into the middle of nowhere everywhere and get crazy network speeds and how we're going. But T-Mobile has continued to roll out our 5G network in a huge capacity. Now, there's big differences, too, in how it's rolled out. I'll just give you like a Chicago example for fun. Highway 88 sits 2 miles from me. It's what goes straight down to Michigan Avenue. So like right on the heart, all the way down to Lake Michigan. And on Highway 88, it sucks. It's really bad traffic. Like it's like 275 in Atlanta. If you're from Atlanta, it's like, I think Highway 4 in LA. Like it's awful. It's just, and there's always construction on this thing. Like, I don't get it. I don't know why we can't ever fix Highway 88. There's just always something going on where they got to shut down a lane. And you guys know what happens when you shut down a lane. Everything backs up forever. So because of our 5G network rides on a different frequency and different band of spectrum, we don't have to shut down our 4G network in order to overlay the 5G. I'm not a network engineer, but my engineers tell me the other guys do. The other guys have to shut that down to be able to transition over. They have to close it down to be able to run different stuff. Because again, we made our network upgradable to 5G when we started rolling all of this out on a 4G basis. And so it put us in this really interesting position here to where we can just run at like an exponential pace that is allowing us to run faster than everybody else, to where we've got this huge lead across the 5G space.
Yeah, that honestly is really fascinating. Even outside of connectivity, just from like a business standpoint, and the response I think of the other carriers to this too. I mean, in a couple of years, it's going to be really interesting to read about this. There's definitely going to be books, and there'll probably be a movie or something, I'm sure. But
I think there'll be like Harvard Business Review studies as to like how did this happen, because it's a little tricky to me in my brain, because again, I'm a little used to sort of being the little kid on the block from the standpoint of there were a lot of deals that I've lost over my career because we just didn't have the assets, the network assets, to be able to go compete in that space. And now we're winning all of these deals. We're winning massive government contracts. Like big cities like City of LA are saying, hey, T-Mobile's our exclusive provider. This is who we're doing everything with. Like stuff like that is happening over and over and over. And it's really cool to see. But what's interesting is somehow we've gotten this, like we've kind of wrestled this network lead. And everybody's going to continue to advertise the way they're going to do. So my hope is people that are on here, you walk with like a couple things that are in your head is like, oh, I should probably check this out. That the spectrum piece is the big one, because that's just, you can't do anything without the spectrum. Like if you could, Verizon would have spent $49 billion in the C-band auction. Like you just, no, you don't go spend $49 billion for fun.
It's great to see all these things and, how they highlight 5G with like the other carriers and everything. Yeah, it's great in such a short or a small area how they highlight their network in an NFL stadium, right? Yep. But that's it, right? With T-Mobile and their vision of, low band versus high band can't travel very far versus the low band of how far it can truly provide the nationwide 5G. And I think it's going to be a game changer in maybe a lot of Minnesota, like Paul was mentioning, or a lot of those Midwest states that haven't experienced this, whether it be home internet. I know me personally, I don't even live in a rural area, and I have T-Mobile home internet, right? Like I cut the cord, I have the home internet, and I'm riding high, right? It's only a matter of time before that's expanded. It's more developed. It's exciting to see these things come about. As I can date back to 2018. Everyone's like 5G, 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 see the commercials, and nothing was really there, right? Like, I kind of blamed it on the carriers at the time. Everyone was interested in it. But now I think that, with what we've all experienced with the pandemic and, the kids, online school, everything that T-Mobile has done, what you guys are doing for first responders and, every K through 12 school has been amazing. So, you stand behind what you believe in. So it's been an exciting ride, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah. There's one more thing I want to say on the network, because you brought it up. You said kind of high band, low band. And so we have a cool graph that we do. We call it the layer cake. And so T-Mobile is the only carrier that has like all three bands on a 5G perspective, which is the millimeter. Then you got the mid band, which is the C band auction. They got low band. And so the easy way to think about it is, low band's the stuff that goes for, miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. It's not super fast, but in rural America, if you're getting 100 megabytes, that's way more than you're getting paying $150 a month for some pipe that's in the ground that's super slow. The mid band to me is like the juicy stuff. And that was the stuff that I referenced that we had 318 that Verizon spent a bunch of money for. And that's where we have the bulk of our spectrum. But we also have the millimeter wave stuff, which is super high density. So when you start talking about interesting things and you start getting into edge computing and private network and network slicing and all of that stuff, we're the only carrier that has all three of these assets that are out there. So that makes us really diversified, to your point, Sean. It's not just us in an NFL stadium. Like, I'll give you a good example, and I know I'm picking on the other guys. They picked on me for years, but there was a commercial here in Chicago. It was 2 years ago. And Magdaly Park is a park that's right down in Chicago next to the Bean. So if you're not familiar with Chicago, the Bean is the silver-looking bean, and Magdaly Park is right there. And it's this big, wide-open park in the middle of the city. It's a great place to go. You got Lake Michigan on the other side, and it's fantastic. And it was somebody on their phone out in Magdaly Park saying, "I'm with, we'll just say XYZ carrier, and look, I just got 1.2 gigabyte download of my new 5G phone." And here was the interesting thing. I don't deny that at all. You were outside, you had clear line of sight to the tower, and you were the only person on that tower. So yes, you got that speed. But the FCC actually made them take the ad down, because then if you put your hand in front of the phone and held it like this, then it went from 1.2 down to like 27 megabits per second, because, as to your point, millimeter wave is super fast, but you can't even have a pane of glass in front of it. You have to have direct line of sight to it. So if you put your phone in front of it or anything else, it's not going to work as well.
Yeah. And for those that haven't seen the Super Bowl commercial with Tom Brady and Gronk, I recommend you go to YouTube, check it out. I'm sure there was a lot of publicity around it because let's just say the other carrier complained about it and it was never showed, but it was I think it was more impactful and it got more publicity with it being shut down before. But phenomenal commercial, great to see. Others are just joining the party, so exciting to see.
For sure.
Now, just to interject real quick, just if you're another carrier, we are planning some webinars for the future, so you'll have your chance to fire any shots back if you feel like any are taken your way. But just wanted to point that out there before we move on to our next question, which you guys actually kind of introduced a little bit. So this next one is, in your guys' experience, do most consumers or the businesses that you work with understand the differences between the 5G bands, or are you having to explain that almost constantly whenever you interact with someone?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at this. So if I'm talking to like a CIO or CTO, they're pretty tuned into a lot of what's going on. Right. But let's call it 2% of your audience, maybe, when you're talking. It depends on what kind of network we're talking about, what we're looking to do. Is it a manufacturing space, hospitality? Like, what are we trying to do there? So overall, no, it's an explaining tactic that we use in terms of just talking about our network. And I think it's one of the things that, again, T-Mobile's, I'm pretty open about it. We didn't have a great network up until a couple of years ago. And a lot of people have had T-Mobile before. And so if you had it 5 years ago, may not have been, it's definitely not the same experience as it was today, but you may not have had a great experience then. And so then you're looking at like, what's changed? Like, why would I do this now? Because it didn't work then. So why are you guys better? And to me, that is the story that I just went over, which is the layer cake and the different bands and what do we have and what, what's available and where are we at from a network perspective and how do we go to market with it?
Yeah. Awesome.
Definitely. I think that, as Paul mentioned, 5 years ago is light years away from what has developed, right? And you never want to put a customer in a bad experience. I know that us personally, we're always working with, whether it's directly with T-Mobile or, working to get that message out there. And I would never want to put a customer in a bad experience and have them test drive it, right? There's nothing like a test drive. If you walk into changing your whole landscape of business and no matter how many lines of service or what you're running in your business, you want to make sure it's the right fit, right? And not saying it, I've never had a bad experience by providing any proof of concept out there and making sure that this is the right fit and them coming back like, wow, you were really right. I love saying, hey, I completely get 5 years ago wasn't that long ago, but give me an opportunity to show you what the changes that they've made and what you're going to experience by doing this. And they've never come back saying, hey, it just didn't work again. So it's a great experience in seeing what has been developed in just such a short time.
Yeah, that's a great use case just for technology in general, right? I mean, 5 years ago, look at the phones everybody was using, and just, yeah, 5 years is not a long time in people years, but in tech years, that's nothing. Cool. So sort of related, I guess, on this next question, but I think it's more inverse. Do a lot of your customers seem to notice that they're using low band 5G over LTE? Like, I know I've seen some of the graphs where, you know, speeds can be kind of comparable, and there's obviously huge benefits for capacity and latency and things like that. But I mean, is it something where, you know, if a very rural customer, are they like, whoa, this is, you know, my life is so much better now, or, you know, how's that look from you guys' perspective?
You know, it's going to be completely dependent on every individual's going to be different, and every use case is going to be different. So to Sean's point, from a drive test perspective, that'd be what I'd recommend. I will give you one story though, because I just saw it this morning in a business review. So we have there's a guy named PJ Crane. PJ's probably not listening, but he works on our enterprise team. Used to work for me here in Chicago, and PJ runs enterprise for us, and he's up in Wisconsin now. And he was doing a speed test at a customer's location, and went out there. And again, he's selling enterprise stuff. So this is, you know, I for some reason I remember this, but it was a 73-line deal that he was doing. He was at the customer's location, and I can't remember what they were paying for whatever pipe they had running in there, but you know, they were getting intermittently kind of 50 to 75 speed download. And PJ went in there and did a speed test with them, and I think it was like 273. He took a screenshot of it as part of his business review, but it's 273 meg download. So there's a lot of places where, yeah, it's going to completely change, because not only is it a better experience, better value for the customer, but like what they're going to end up paying was like a quarter or a third as to what they were. I can't remember what it was that he told me it was, but it was, I mean, it was significant. And if you're a business owner, that's meaningful. If you're a consumer, it's meaningful too. But like as a business owner, when you can reduce costs and increase your technology output, that's really difficult to do, I think. And so I think in that capacity, you know, just what Sean was saying, as long as you're test driving the network, I think you're going to be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been engaged and working a ton of opportunities. I know that your guys' fixed wireless plans just came out, I would say August of last year. A lot of businesses were still closed at that time, right? As things are opening up, this is the time to, hey, if you're looking to refresh your hardware and you're trying to future-proof your business moving forward, doesn't matter if you're an SMB all the way up to enterprise, I think it's a great opportunity to reduce cost in certain scenarios, right? Based on the usage and based on everything that's going around them. And we've been seeing a ton of that, right? Everyone's willing. Everyone doesn't really know what it's going to do for their business. We look at the difference between 3G and 4G and when it developed. The innovators out there didn't know that the Ubers of the world and all these different applications were going to be created until they understood what they could play with, right? So I think we're going to see a huge shift in the coming years once it's truly developed across the board, that you're going to see a lot of unique applications and different use cases come out that we aren't even thinking of today, right? It's only going to get better, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things about 5G is just you really can't predict what it's gonna turn into. There's so much possibility out there. But right on. Okay, so moving right along to our next question. Let me pop it up on the screen here. So outside of download speeds, what aspects of 5G are people drawn towards the most? You know, when I wrote this, I wasn't even thinking about pricing being a big thing, but Paul, you were just saying how that's a big benefit to people. I know mine. I'm actually not personally on 5G just yet, so capacity is one of the things from a personal standpoint that I'm really excited for, just because I can be at an intersection and my LTE doesn't quite get me there anymore. Yeah,
I think there's a couple of things. I think the first is like what's possible. So to Sean's point, who knows what comes out of this? People that are far smarter than me are already probably well down the path and have venture capital money backed behind them and all of this different stuff. We have a campus down in Atlanta on Peachtree Corners that through the acquisition of Sprint we inherited, and it's a 5G campus, and it's everything between you know, self-driving cars and autonomous robots and like everything you can imagine. I think it's like 500 square miles. It's huge. Like it's not square miles. It's got to be something different. Maybe 500 acres. Thank you. 500 acres of space down there. It's like 500 square miles feels pretty big. That doesn't seem right. But like that's a place and I haven't had a chance to get there yet. I just keep hearing about it, and it like that's to me is like what's possible when you start talking about 5G. I think you start to get into a lot of these different things that we don't know what is possible. There's about 32 things I'd love to rattle off, but I'm under NDA on, and that would be bad if I did. But they're all in this what's possible category, and it's I mean, everything you could possibly think of is out there. And then I think the other thing is value. It is just, okay, if you know, T-Mobile's never been a company that's had fiber in the ground. And we, you know, we have wireline assets that we inherited through the Sprint acquisition, but we don't have fiber in the ground. And so helping people cut the cord either at their office, you know, we announced a huge solution in WFX, which is work from anywhere. That is a T-Mobile solution. That is a work from home secure router solution. And, you know, I'll just say average cost of it's around $100. So that's probably what you're paying for home internet anyways. But now if I'm a CTO, like the number one concern if you've been a CTO over the last year is what? Security, yeah. It's security, right? So what do I do? Now I've got, you know, I had a couple of access points I could keep locked down. And now I've got 482 people and 482 access points out there that I got to secure. That's scary. And so we've introduced solutions and security that overlays over the top of that to be able to help customers go to market with a work from home type of solution. And so when you start talking about 5G, you start getting into these types of things. Like Sean, you said it, you're on our home internet. So we don't have a reason to not continue to advance technology there. And I'm not saying other people don't, by the way. I just mean we're not trading off margins internally and in financial worksheets as to how do we get to where we need to get to. It's simply, listen, you know, this is T-Mobile being the uncarrier. It was a cool slogan that John Ledger came up with in 2013, but it's become a part of our DNA where we just continue to break the rules of the industry. Like we continue to do stuff. And it's everywhere from, you know, Project 10 Million, where pre-COVID, we said, hey, we're going to give away 10 million lines of service to underserved kids in underserved communities. That obviously accelerated a lot when all of a sudden everybody had to work from home. Like you had no idea the numbers that came out of that. But we said, hey, we're going to give it for free. We did the same program for first responders well before other people came out and said, we're all about first responders. Then we did it for veterans. We keep doing all of these things that all started on the backs of like, what if we just didn't have contracts? Like, do you guys remember when I mean, I know others still have contracts, but like, what if we didn't do that? Like, what if we didn't do that? Here's a cool stat, by the way, on that. Yeah. So our churn was, I'm going to guess, don't quote me on this, which is bad to say on a podcast, but like our churn was about 3%. It was the highest in the industry by far, not even close. We went to no contracts. And you mentioned text services, Sean, which I'd be happy to talk about with everybody because Callie Fields went out and developed this, and I used to work on a team with Callie and have immense respect for her. But we went out and invested into our customer care. So we said we don't want to do contracts. We want to invest in service and customer care. And our churn has dropped every quarter since then to now we have the industry's lowest churn. So we don't lock you into a contract, but less people leave us. That's a little crazy. So that's like you got to be doing something right with your network, with your service, with your product, with your value, if you're driving that kind of value, and people can leave whenever they want, but they don't.
Well, look at the commitments you guys have made, not only with all the initiatives that you've rattled off, of which there's time and time again, you're always expanding, but also from a 5G perspective, like rolling this out isn't cheap, right? There's a lot of investment, no matter the carrier and where you're going, but T-Mobile's commitment to whether you're a B2B or a consumer was, we are not going to charge you more for your 5G service. Every other carrier out there, whether it be the 4GE or the 5GE on the blue or the red, $10 per line, my sister called me up yelling at me, they're charging you more for that service, whether you got the device it's going to produce or not, right? And they stand behind their commitments. Those are very, very well documented. And it's exciting to see, you know, from the education piece, that was enormous, right? COVID just expedited what was going to take place already, right? You're going to see a lot more people, regardless, based on the organizations in the enterprise space, strategic space, working from home, that they are going to give them the freedom. Look at the pool of people that they can hire now, that they're not confined to, I'm sorry to say, Minnesota, right? Like, look at all those huge strategic accounts that are located there, but now they can maybe hire from California, or everyone's moving to Florida because we don't pay taxes and we've been open and everything. So
you had to rub that in my face, didn't you? Sitting here in Illinois.
It's been crazy. I've been watching the housing market here. If you put your house up for sale, it's sold that day. You'll have 10 offers and it's game changer. So it's exciting to work with somebody and a carrier, especially when they stand behind their word and they go above and beyond. So if you haven't experienced that, I just recommend you giving it an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I have actually a question that just kind of pops into my head. It's not something I'd written down before. The WFX is really interesting to me. How is that going? So like, I've seen all sorts of articles. It's either one way or the other, right? Like, this company's having all their people work remotely, or, people want to work in the office. There's been so much just back and forth. So like that's something that's tangible and something that's real, right? So like, how is that rollout going, I guess?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 lenses. One, we ran out of inventory really fast.
There you go.
2 is from a T-Mobile perspective, and then the third lens would probably be like, this is just what I'm hearing from customers and partners, is, and this is like my personal experience too, the funny part is, I won't give you stats on kind of our growth in the channel here. Yeah. It's been immense in the past 6 months. Unless I met you pre-COVID, I don't know who you are. I lead sales for T-Mobile in the channel. I run all of sales, but like, I don't know 97% of the people that are on my team. I'm looking forward to meeting them, but we've figured out how to serve customers. We've figured out how to drive value. We've figured out how to do all of these things while sitting at home or in a camper like I do every day, to just, how do you go drive value? That said, I think we all miss the human interaction. I think it was somebody said, it might have been you, Sean, that said we haven't given hugs to anybody in like a long time. And so there's that human element. And so what's emerging is this hybrid workforce. And with hybrid workforce, the 2 big things I think are going to be mobility and security that come out of that. And that from my perspective, from a T-Mobile perspective, I think we couldn't be positioned any better to help customers that are out there and help partners that are out there. And so that to me is where, there's an intersection here that says maybe it's people are working from home 4 days a week, 3 days a week, but 1 day a week they go into the office just to have a kind of, hey, recognize people that are on your team, and have, there's power in sitting in a room with a whiteboard. It's a little clunky. I think we've all done it, trying to, use some application and draw with a mouse and kind of figure it out as you're like, no, this is this chart and this thing. So there's certainly value in that for sure. But I also think we've learned how do you be a lot more efficient working from home. And, we've just been forced into this kind of category here, but I think it's really interesting, because one of the things that we talk about, at least at T-Mobile a lot, is a lot about work-life balance. And in some ways, COVID made that worse. And in some ways, it made it better. So if you're in a major market like Chicago, you probably have an hour commute to the office like I do. Well, now I get 2 hours of my life back every day. And what can you do in that 2 hours? For me, that means I can go to the gym. Like it's a different aspect of like, what else does that mean? When I'm done working at 6 or 6:39, then I'm done. I don't have a 45-minute commute home, so I'm not getting home later, and it rolls over to life in all sorts of different capacities. So I think that's the interesting part about what we're seeing and where I personally see things going.
In your new role too, Paul, you mentioned if I hadn't met you pre-COVID, I probably, you haven't been introduced to some of your new teammates and everything, but think about that. T-Mobile finalized one of the world's largest mergers during COVID. Okay, so you took 1,000 T-Mobile account executives, SEs, and all the different leadership, and you took 1,000 people from Sprint and just said, "Here you go." And look at the outcome, right? Everyone's working together. There's going to be bumps and bruises along the way, but one thing that I've experienced is that it's never shown to the customer. The customer comes first, which has been a great experience, and making sure that they're doing everything. So it's only going to get better, right? I wouldn't trade working from home for the world. Our headquarters is in Knoxville. I live in Tampa. it gives you a different set of balances. There's some days that the dog might be barking because the guys from Amazon are here or whatever, but hey, listen, we get it done, right? And if you're putting up results and you trust your employees, and then, you know, I think it's a new wave, and COVID has just expedited what was coming forth anyways.
Yeah. The only thing I missed out on is the beer taps at 4:30 here, but
yeah, that's the one day a week where you go to the office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's see. Just to move along for time's sake, we'll hit our next question here. How much of the population has access to T-Mobile's 5G network, and how quickly is that number growing? And I understand you might not have exact numbers or anything, so just an estimate or you know, however you want to answer that's fine.
So I'll just give you a rough math.
Yeah.
And I don't know the number off the top of my head. I really should, but call it 2/3 of the population, and that's just because I think we cover like 200 million. Like I can't remember the exact number, but call it 2/3. Mm-hmm. And I won't give you the stat of our rollout every week of what we do, like of how many different cities we light up. I feel like we should have like a website that just maybe there is one out there that I just don't know about, but it just has like all the, you know, just lighting up all of these cities, and this is kind of the way things go. Yeah. But I go back to the cities number more than anything, which is, look, we're in over 2,500 cities of 5G capacity today. Yeah. And again, comparatively speaking, that's far, far greater than what you'll get with the other two. Mm-hmm. So if you're, you know, from a 5G perspective, it's pretty immense already. Like this has gone much faster than 4G for us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. So I guess to bring it to the next, actually, this is the last question in this segment. What does the 5G adoption rate look like from a business perspective? I know you were saying earlier, you know, it used to be a little difficult to have those conversations, but I mean, is it now just, you know, success every person you talk to essentially? Or I mean, is it like you were saying, you know, the work from anywhere thing, you're running out of inventory. So is that kind of the same mentality just all the way across the board for you guys?
Yeah, no, it's not a 1-inch putt on every conversation that we're having by any stretch. Because I think the thing is, what are you solving for? Like, if you're just moving from a 4G perspective to a 5G perspective, you're just going from an iPhone 8 to an iPhone 12. Mm-hmm. How did that better your life or your solution? I don't know that it. Now, in the case of a lot of business that, you know, we do with you guys at RCN, you're talking about a much difference of router speeds, whether that's a failover solution for, you know, a huge convenience store chain that's out there, or whether that's, you know, a small business that has 2 stores or 3 stores, and this is running their POS. And they went from a really, you know, kind of it got you by solution to holy cow, now this is really quick. I don't, you know, customers put their card in and there you go. And it's, or I used to have to pay for a Wi-Fi pipe to be able to come in, and now I can do that over T-Mobile's internet. So it's not the easiest thing. And the key thing, at least in my head, is, listen, if we're solving problems, like if we're bringing solutions to problems that 5G solves, and a lot of time that is speed, lower latency, getting just business done quicker, or the ability to do business, to be able to do it remotely, that's where, yes, there's huge adoption. And this is also from a very, you know, I guess the terms that I'm speaking of, it's almost from a consumer mindset, or just a phones and tablets and call it, you know, maybe a little bit on the laptop experience. That doesn't talk about all of the advancements in healthcare and in manufacturing. Like, you start talking about private network slicing, edge computing, like all of that stuff that we do with, you know, larger companies, larger entities that are out there, and working with some of our partners that get us into those conversations. That's, to me, honestly, that's where things get really interesting. Like, think about a manufacturing site that is in a 100-year-old building. That is not that's a really difficult place to cover when you're just talking about just Wi-Fi. You got to run an awful lot of pipe, and as you guys know, you got awful lot of routers through. Like, you got to do an awful lot of stuff. But now, if you have like a private network that sits over the top of that, you have a whole different story that you're talking about there. It's a whole different ballgame. And so that, to me, is, we solved a solution, or they had a problem. We solved the problem. Here's the solution. Here's what it involves. That's where they're super complex and technical, and I probably was way over my skis even saying what I was saying, and I need a sales engineer by my side to walk me through it. But those are the conversations that are happening out there every single day that we're trying to work with CTOs out there, whether you're a big multinational company, or hey, I've got a smaller location, or I work from home. Like, it runs the gamut of everything that's out there that we're able to help with.
That's awesome. Yeah. Sean,
it's exciting to see the different verticals. I know, Paul, you just mentioned healthcare, right? Like, home healthcare and these different responses. Like,
another hour talking about home healthcare.
Yeah, home healthcare and what you guys have already done with the VA and are continuing to build on. Like, it's just amazing, what is going to happen in the next couple of years. And it's already happening today, right? Maybe not in the big, broad scope of things, but previous roles, I'm really excited to see. I always say, I call it sitting at the dinner table, right? We can speak the T-Mobile language, but T-Mobile is being invited to those conversations now, right? Before, the market share is starting to shift, and I can tell you that the others are scared. When I started a couple of years ago in a previous role, it was less than 5%. That has grown to 10%, and it's only going to expedite from here with the team that Paul has behind him, the direct sellers, and everyone else at T-Mobile, and the vision that they have. So it's an exciting time for everyone to start celebrating here in the near future.
We'll move on to our Q&A section. I know I saw a couple questions come through as we were talking, and we've got 6 minutes left, so this should wrap us up really well. So let's see. Starting off, what are some challenges T-Mobile's facing when trying to bring corporations to Team Magenta?
It's a good question. I'll answer it. I think here's the hardest thing. For the most part, especially when you're talking to businesses, they've had a previous relationship for a long time, and so they're comfortable, right? And there's trust there, and you're unseating a relationship. Sean, you mentioned it before. And I sure hope you get paid. Like, your commission check is something relative to like growth, because 8,000%, you should get. I'll talk to Gary. You should get a bonus. So it's unseating that relationship, and that's something we take very, very seriously. And that is the whole value equation, and what's the customer journey that gets them to that point. That's the hardest thing. Is you're dealing with folks that have had one carrier for a long time sometimes, and everything may make sense. Maybe a better value, maybe a better solution, better overall fit, better support, better service, all of that stuff. It's still difficult. It's still really difficult to be able to do that. But again, I think that's why we're all here, is to how do we walk customers through that customer journey, because not only pre-sale, but post-sale is really, I think, where we've invested a lot of resources and a lot of time and energy to ensure that once the sale is done, the customers have the experience that we talked about up front. And I think that bears out in our churn numbers and having the lowest churn.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, next question we've got in here. What is the definition of 5G, and has it been defined? My understanding is that's more based on the bands, correct? And you were talking about the layer cake. That probably would be a good time to pull that up if we had that. But yeah, do you have any words to that?
Here. Honestly, this will sound bad. I don't know what the technical definition. I'm sure there's a sales engineer who's like screaming because they've told me, and they're like, I've told you this 9 times, Paul. Why do you not remember? I don't know what it is. More than anything, it's a great thing for marketing to grab onto, to say, hey, let's push the next thing here. There is a technical reason for it, though. I promise you. I'm sure if you Googled it right now, you'd find it faster than I can mess this up with. So.
Yeah, that's exactly why I was trying to push that question onto you guys. Cool. Okay, so let's see. What does hardware compatibility look like for T-Mobile's network? Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm not sure if any of you guys might want to take that one.
I'll take it too.
I mean, a little bit. I mean, I've seen, 2 years ago, I think a lot of, we all know about the flagship devices, your Apple devices, your Samsung, your tablets. 2 years ago, I think a lot of OEMs in the, whether it be a router or a connected laptop or a ruggedized device, for instance, a Zebra device, they weren't even thinking of T-Mobile, right? Now that T-Mobile has come out and made such a big push and they're hearing it, that they are actually manufacturing these devices specific to T-Mobile, which should say something to you, right? They see the shift coming, whether it be Cradlepoint, Zebra, Lenovo, all of these devices. T-Mobile was thought as an afterthought 2 years ago. And we kept going to them saying, hey, we got these opportunities. We need it certified. We needed you guys to build it. Well, there's not enough opportunity. Well, there's plenty of opportunity that we're seeing. So these OEMs are truly listening now, and you're going to see a ton of devices be launched in the next, I would say, 6 to 12 months, whether it be the CAT S42 that launched a few months ago. Yeah, the S62 that's launching on T-Mobile's paper. There's a ton of devices that are being manufactured as we speak that is only going to earn T-Mobile a ton of business in the future now that they're going through the certification processes.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, anything you want to add to that?
No, Sean said it. I was just going to say the big thing is certification, and certification to me equals security. And so that's the big thing. If you're out there and you may get a better price on a different device, I would say, but that's not always equally great. And so again, if I go back to original comments around security is probably the #1 thing in this work from home environment. And we have a huge portfolio of devices that are certified, to Sean's point, and it's growing by leaps and bounds like every month. But that would be the big thing, is make sure it's certified. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, as a hardware reseller, of RCN, I'm going to point out, just go talk to Sean if you're curious which hardware is going to work out for you. So he'll get you set up.
We know all the bands. We got to make sure they have 71, 66, to really show them the experience. And it's great to see they're coming out on a monthly basis now. So I'm excited to see some of the new hardware that's going to be launched in the next couple of months as well, as it continues to develop.
Yeah, same. Cool. So we're right up on 4 o'clock now. So we'll start wrapping this up. But